Well, take, say, the National Public Radio, which is the public radio system. There is actually a statement in print by one of the co-hosts of their primetime program, All Things Considered, saying that I'm the one person they'll never allow to be on.
I mean, it's not in their interest to have people talk about things like this. Sometimes they're pressured and they'll allow a couple of minutes here and there. And it's kind of interesting the way it works. So the television's mostly out except for commercial cable television. But radio is a little freer. The National Public Radio is considered the liberal, the kind of outer limits of the left in the United States. Very small, but it's considered very dissident. And they're the ones with the sharpest restrictions by far. I mean, they won't allow a millimeter of deviation from the party line. But sometimes they are under pressure to do it. And it's interesting the way it works. So, for example, during the first Gulf War, I'm pretty well known around Boston, and that happens to be the center, the ideological center for National Public Radio. It's their flagship station and all that sort of thing. And there's a lot of pressure there to let me be on now and then. So during the first Gulf War, they did approach me, and they told me I would be allowed to have 2.5 minutes. However, they insisted that I write out what I was going to say, send it to the central office so they could ensure that it's, okay. And once they approved it, I had to read it. And they pre-recorded it to make sure that I wouldn't add a phrase that wasn't, that went off the limits. The first time, I thought it's kind of ridiculous, but so did the staff. The staff's mostly laughing, the engineers and so on. But I did read it, and the first reading took 2 minutes and 36 seconds. So they told me, no, I got to reread it. So I read it a little faster, got it into 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and then they actually did run it. And there are other things like that. I'll just mention one other case. Same National Public Radio again, the kind of left medium. They have a book review thing. And again, they're under a lot of pressure often to have something about books of mine. Around 10 years ago, there was a book of mine that was based on lectures over CBC. And it was actually a bestseller in Canada for years, but nobody ever heard of it in the United States. It was never reviewed or anything. But there was pressure around Boston to get them to review that book, okay? So they finally agreed. And we again had a pre-recorded 5-minute interview with Robert Siegel, who's their big shot intellectual. And it was actually announced. Their main program, called All Things Considered, starts at 5 o'clock, and then every educated person is supposed to listen to it. And at 5 o'clock, they announced that they were going to have a review of this book. The publishers, South End Press, called me up and said, great, it's going to be on. It got to 5:30. It got to 5:25. At 5:25, the program stopped, and there were 5 minutes of music. At 5:30, when they move into the next segment, they announced the next segment, and phone calls started coming in from all over the place, saying, what happened to that 5-minute review? And people, I wasn't listening, but people started calling me and saying, what happened to the review? So after about 10 minutes, I got a call from the manager of the whole thing in Washington, who said, something very strange. We're getting a lot of calls saying that your review didn't appear, but we know that it did. I see it right on my program here. So I said, I don't know anything about it. About 10 minutes later, she called me back, very chagrined, and she said that she was overruled for the first time ever by some higher-up who heard the announcement in the first 5 minutes and canceled it. Well, that caused quite a furor. She was very upset, for professional reasons. Didn't want to be overruled. And there was a lot of public reaction. So they finally agreed to redo another 5 minutes, pre-recorded, and that was the second one they actually ran. Well, that's off at the left liberal end of the spectrum. When you move to the more conservative commercial media, they're less constrained.